we are so lucky in this area to have so many great nonprofits and organizations, but we've all had to shift and struggle a little bit as we continue to try to navigate the COVID-19 crisis. To talk a little bit more, let's bring in Shaindle Braunstein. She is the CEO for JARC, a nonprofit organization here in our area that helps individuals with development disabilities. Shaindle, thank you again for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell us more about JARC? I know we've had you on before,
Yes.
but for those that aren't familiar with your organization, give us some background.
Absolutely. So JARC is, again, a local not-for-profit, and we provide residential services to adults with developmental disabilities so that we can make sure they are living their fullest lives possible. We're actually about to enter our 52nd year, and I say to people, the last year in change has been interesting and new for all of us.
Right. So I always kind of equate it to, it's like dog years, right? The 1 year has been like 7.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think I'm going to just start thinking about it in that regard, because it certainly, it does seem longer than it's been, but it's good that we have a lot of hope on the horizon.
But you haven't stopped the important work that you've been doing and helping so many people here. And I love the history too, how the organization even got started.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, this was, you talk about what an idea becomes. 52 years ago, actually, a group of 5 families who had children with developmental disabilities, and understand in those days, when we look at 50 some odd years ago, what would happen to children or adults with developmental disabilities if they didn't have a family member to care for them, is they would be sent to an institution. And these families said, what's going to happen to our children when we're gone? We can't allow this to be the life that they live. There has to be something better. And it was groundbreaking at the time. This concept, what if people lived together in the community? What if we provided housing that's not a building far away from everyone, but it's in a neighborhood? It's with other people. And, we grew from this tiny little, right, mom and pop, into an organization that serves 200 people and close to 30 locations across Oakland County. And it's really just pretty incredible to see what can happen when somebody sees a challenge and says, wait a minute, that's a problem, and I'm not okay with that. I need to fix it.
It's really what a lasting legacy for our community. But when we think about, even as adults, we've had a hard time with this past year. How have you been able to help manage the crisis with those with developmental disabilities who may have a hard time kind of understanding this?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people like routine.
Yeah, so, and that's really been, I think, a large challenge, but one, I will say my team, our staff, really everyone has really risen to the occasion. But you can imagine, like you said, for any of us, I mean, for myself to feel this sense of mourning for my routines, for being able to do the things that I was able to do, before, and are not able to do right now because of safety reasons. Many of the people that we serve really crave and thrive right on that structure and that routine. And you can imagine to have all of that be taken away from you overnight. So what we've done internally is really build that support system around people, providing, and we talked about that when I was on over the summer, lots of virtual activities, again, lots of in-home activities, lots of support in a way that's safe so that we can create an environment that people are feeling safe and comfortable in. And I think we've also done a really good job, and the people we serve have done a fantastic job. And we've had really, clear conversations, and everyone's needs their different messaging, right? Everyone has a different place in which they understand, but talking about the need to stay safe. And again, the need to do these things because of COVID, and putting our list together for the future of the things we want to do, when COVID is gone. And interestingly, for, vaccinations for people served, there was concern initially that some of the the people would be hesitant, right? Anyone's hesitant. Needles can be scary. The environment can be scary. And watching 100%, 100% of the people we serve and people walking in here, one young woman in particular, I remember, she came into the building with her hands raised high in the air and she was shouting, "Safety first." So, again, I think it's just as an example of what we can do when we say, okay, right, we have a problem. These are the challenges. What can we do to alleviate as many of the challenges as possible? And just be open and honest with one another and support one another.
So I know that you've been able to host some of the vaccination clinics, and with that, um, is it the 2 shot or the 1 shot?
We've actually done the 2 shots, and early on, which I'm grateful for, we run a combination of licensed adult foster care homes and other congregate living, assisted living facilities. So we, in our first round, actually, were able to participate in the federal pharmacy program in January. And, they managed all the vaccinations for our adult foster care homes. And then as we went through the process of working with the Oakland County Health Department for assisted living, one thing that we recognized early on is it's not so simple to manage the logistics. And fortunately, again, I have a fabulous team here. We developed a project plan and timing schedules, and to consider also for a person with a disability, any disability, right? What does the room need to look like? Maybe loud noises scare me. Maybe crowds scare me. There's so many variables that could enter in to someone, right, being panicked because there are all these sensory challenges that are going on. And as we went through this process of getting our people vaccinated, and I'm grateful, the people that we serve in our staff actually were vaccinated in February. We said, okay, if this is a challenge for us, what about the people who don't have us, but who still are working with the challenge of a disability? And we talked to the Oakland County Health Department and said, we need to be your partner in this, because even though, right, selfishly, our people are taken care of, we can't imagine that this is going to be a simple process for adults with developmental disabilities, again, or physical disabilities who may need a ramp to get into the building, wide, again, doors to make sure that it's fully accessible, and their caregivers. And, you said, right, we've all pivoted and we've all changed. I mean, right, if someone had said to me, March of 2020, would I be doing anything that I'm doing right now? Probably not. But even had somebody said to us in January of 2021, so do you think that you're going to be hosting, vaccine clinics 1 to 2 days a week? I would have said, well, why would we be in that business? But again, identify a need, identify a problem. And I think that speaks to our founders, craft the solution.
Oh, and I love that, craft the solution. Shaindle Braunstein with us here on the MegaCast. She's the CEO of JARC. And with that, so you get people through the first dose,
Right.
but it's not over, because now the logistics continue
Right.
with the second dose.
So, yeah,
So,
we
but did
actually,
you learn from the first one? It made it easier the second time around?
so because, again, I hate to say that we got to experiment with our people. It was not an experiment, but
Right.
again, because of the federal pharmacy program where we had our dates ahead of time. And again, we had these private clinics. Walgreens was actually our pharmacy partner through the federal pharmacy program, and they were fantastic. And ahead of time, when we organized the first clinic, they said, this is the return date. And what we'll do, right, is we'll just schedule the exact same times, 4 weeks later, because it was the Moderna was the first vaccine that we received. And we looked at that and we said, that was a great idea. So we're kind of calling it the wash, rinse, repeat cycle. When people come in the door, we actually schedule 2 dates. We schedule for Pfizer, here's your first date. Your second date is exactly 21 days later. For Moderna, here's your first date. Your second date is exactly 28 days later. And if you came at 9 o'clock the first time, you come at 9 o'clock the second. That makes it simpler for people. there's no anxiety of, but how am I going to get my second dose? And what if my appointment's later in the day and I can't make it?
Yeah.
And then they can book those out. Obviously, you do have sometimes people can't make that second date. We work them into another clinic, but that tends to be the exception rather than the rule. And I won't take credit for this, although I will say I do help with reminder phone calls. I take my list of 25 people, but again, there are lots of people around me on my team who are sending constant reminder emails and phone calls and making sure that we don't have anyone who misses that second dose, because obviously full immunity isn't until 2 weeks after that second dose. And if you
Mhm.
miss it, you could still contract COVID.
So, how hopeful does being a part of the vaccine clinic make you and your team? Are you more hopeful that we're closer to the end of this now?
So I'm definitely more hopeful. And I would say also I'm more cognizant of the fact that we needed to be doing this. I have met people, I'll share an example with you. We had a young lady in a wheelchair with cystic fibrosis. She couldn't, again, she was eligible for the vaccine. And I do say to people, right? Being eligible doesn't mean you have access. So she had been eligible. She couldn't find an appointment, and she needs to make sure that she's finding an appointment in a fully accessible space where there's a ramp for her wheelchair to come in, and being able, again, with an underlying health condition as serious as that, and COVID, which is a respiratory disease, to be able to vaccinate her, and knowing, we're doing part of this to keep her safe. We had just last, actually, it was Monday, a gentleman who was 95 years old, but he doesn't use the internet, doesn't have a computer, right? So he's like making phone calls and having someone tell him, oh, no, 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 just call this number. They'll help you, they'll get you in. And he doesn't have to deal with the challenge of technology he's not comfortable using. So it's going to take a village. And I look at this and say, we're one tiny part, and it is taking all of the vaccination partners who are working so hard in this. Again, the Oakland County Health Department and all of our health departments, of course, and the pharmacies that are participating. We actually have a pharmacy we're working with in our smaller clinics, AMAC Pharmacy, which provides medications to our homes. They're tremendous. It's going to take every single one of us doing this work, and doing this work in a way that makes that fits people's needs to get us to the end. But I feel like a little bit, I'm so close I can kind of taste it, but I have to stop myself and say, okay, right, we're getting there. Let's get over this last hump.
What a learning experience it has been for you and your team. Any positives that maybe have come out of this that will stick around post pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the biggest positive is the organizations that we are working with now, Detroit Disability Power, fantastic organization. I never would have met them if it hadn't been right for COVID, if it hadn't been for how are we going to get persons with disabilities vaccinated. The relationships that I've been able to craft with other agencies, Angels Place and Progressive Living, community living centers, because we looked at this and said, okay, we're not going to be competitors in this space. Let's combine forces. And I think that some tremendous good is going to come out of this, has come out of this, in people just coming to the table and not saying, I need to be first. Our name needs to be highest. You have to have our logo on this, but how we can cooperate. And I'll use actually my landlord and partner agency. So we rent space in the Jewish Federation building, the Max M. Fisher building. And obviously, right, this building has, for all intents and purposes, had its public spaces closed because of COVID. And going to the chief operating officer here, Steve Ingber, and saying, so what would you think if we started running vaccine clinics in your building? And not having him say, oh, hold on a second, we have to talk about this. That's a lot of traffic. But having him say, great, how can we help? We'll figure it out. We'll bring in extra security. We'll give you volunteers. He was standing actually at the front door of the building Monday with a clipboard, checking people in. So I think that speaks to nobody is operating from a place of what is in this for me, as much as what's in this for the community, and how can we work together to provide normalcy sooner rather than later.
That really is a beautiful sentiment to come out of this because, I think so many of us that have worked with some of these government agencies, there is a lot of that, no, I need to do this. I approve this logo here. And it's not about that right now. And we've learned it's everything. We're all connected.
Very much
We
so.
always say that, but people just don't really take it into consideration. But one thing COVID has definitely taught us, we're all connected. And while we can't be together in person, you can still forge new relationships that are going to last hopefully long beyond this pandemic.
Right. I think they will. And I think it's also just made us grateful for personal interactions. How many of us said before, really, do I have to go to another meeting? Do we have to go to that dinner? Do we have to do these things? And now saying, when can I do these things again? So I think it's just provided a lot more appreciation. But, again, I think it really, so many people that I know, so many incredible people, and the ego's been taken off the table. And that's incredibly refreshing, especially to say to people, hey, I need help, right? How hard is that for many of us to say, I can't do all this myself. I need help. And not have people judge you. And really, again, just want to be there to assist you to bring everyone up.
So with that, Shaindle, do you anticipate some of your programs that switch to virtual will be back in person soon?
So we're moving slowly towards that. The good news is again that as our people are vaccinated and as some activities become safer, and fortunately, I was laughing a little bit this morning when someone said, "Oh, it's rainy and overcast today," and I said, "But it's not snowing." Last week at this time it was snowing. As the weather's gotten better, that we're starting, again to provide more in-person activities in a safe way. We do lots of parking lot things. I don't know that we're going to be 100% anytime, in the next few months, but I do think, we're kind of slowly, we're turning up the dimmer switch. We haven't turned the lights back on, but we're turning that dimmer switch and are starting to pivot some of our people to more in person, as we can do so safely. But certainly having these vaccines and having the data that's come on, that's come out on the safety and the efficacy of these vaccines, I do tell people when they'll say, oh my goodness, 340 people still got COVID. And I'll say 340 out of more than 3 million. I'll take those odds any day that, we are getting to the end of this. But again, and I'll quote our governor, right? It's going to be a process. We're going to start to feel a little more normal every day. And my hope is maybe 2022, we look back and say, remember when?
Right, right.
Remember when we weren't in a room together? Remember when we did these things?
Well, let's hope it brings new appreciation and gratitude for the moments when we can be together. So I think we'll all enjoy that a little bit more. Before we say goodbye to you, how can people find out more information if they need to do so?
So, first of all, I want to say again to anyone, regardless of whether or not you have a disability, but certainly for somebody, with a disability or underlying health condition who needs a quiet, again, space and a different kind of setup to feel comfortable receiving this vaccine, they can call our vaccine hotline, which is 248-940-2605. So again, that's our vaccine hotline. I had a gentleman actually I talked to last week who has a panic disorder. And he tried to stand in line. He got an appointment, which was fantastic, but he tried to stand in line at the pharmacy. And especially after COVID, he was overwhelmed by the crowd. He had to leave. We were able to provide a quiet room for him to be in. and to just receive his vaccine by himself. So again, to anyone who needs us, we're here for you. And if you need access to this vaccine, please, please, please give us a call, and we're happy to help you. And then obviously for anyone who would want to learn more about JARC and what we're doing, I would always encourage them to go to our website, which is jarc.org, and you can sign up for our newsletters, you can sign up to volunteer, you can watch some of our videos, and there is always room at our table for anyone who wants to be, a part of the work that we're doing, and incredible volunteer opportunities and just some great stories.
Well, it lifts your heart as well. So thank you again for taking time out of your day to be with us.
And thank you for having me again.
And thanks for what you're doing for the community. People forget about those that are falling through the cracks, and you're there to lift them up. So I'm sure it's very much appreciated for, those people, but also their family members as well.
Right. We all have to remember we are all individuals, and we have individual needs and individual wants. And we try to meet people where they are.
Thank you again, Shaindle Braunstein with us. She's the CEO of JARC.